Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Unit 4. That's a continuation of Unit 4. That's the design process. We are in Lesson 10 right now. We're looking at paper prototypes. Before starting to design apps, we need to help you better scope your expectations. So let's take a look at our objectives here today. Again, paper prototypes. What are paper prototypes? Paper prototypes are kind of the rough draft, you might say, of what your app is going to be consisted of. It allows you to test things, go through things, refine things, make sure that your app is going to work properly. So for the overview, we look at paper prototypes allow developers to quickly test ideas before investing a lot of time writing code. In this lesson, you as a team or as an individual will explore some example apps created in App Lab and use these examples to help inform the first paper prototype of your apps. Okay, again, the vocab word today, prototype, a first or early model of a product that allows you to test assumptions before developing the final version. Again, it's a paper prototype, a paper example of what your app is going to be like, and allows you to test it on somebody else or a few other people before you actually start coding it. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through a few apps. So you need to be in code.org and you need to be in Unit 4, Lesson 10. And we're going to go through a couple of these apps as examples of ideas, or give you some examples of some ideas that you might want to look at for your app before we actually go into the user interface codes for apps. All right. So the first thing we're going to look at is example app types, which is Bubble 2. In the following levels, you'll see different example of apps. They will give you an idea of what the user interface could look like for apps with different goals. For example, click through the example to get a feel of how it functions. In your activity guide, make a note of any features or UI elements, user interface elements, you can find and you might want to use. Discuss with your group or think about it as an individual what user interface features you could apply to your chosen topic. A note about functionality: these apps are prototypes. They allow a user to interact with the design without worrying about the underlying functionality. For example, when you use the quiz app, each question will always respond the same way, regardless of which answer you choose. By focusing on the interactive prototype, first you can learn a lot about how users might use your app before investing too much energy and make it actually work. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of the apps. All right, so the first app is a demo app again. The first one is QuizMe. A QuizMe app can be used to teach or help reinforce information important to your chosen topic. At its most basic, a quiz app is composed of a screen for each question with 2 or more buttons for multiple choice answers. Each button links to a page that either confirms that you are correct or gives you information about what you found or why you were wrong. More advanced quiz apps could include features such as different types of questions, such as matching, free response, or even integrative games, or randomizing the order of questions, or changing the question based on how well you're doing, provide a final score, or incorporating study material. Functionality missing in this prototype: questions aren't exactly or actually checked for correctness. All right, so let's go ahead and run the app. We'll do this one together. Okay, how it works. This takes us to a page that explains how it works, information about how the app works. This page also has a UI or a user interface button that takes you back home. So we press that button, we go back home. Okay, we now take the quiz. We're going to take the quiz. Here it is. Which one? So it's multiple choice. You choose which one you like. Let's go with this one. Okay, then we submit it, and it's correct. We move on to the next question. Okay, why? Let's just say because. We submit it, and it's incorrect, so it still takes you on to the next question without letting you correct that particular question. When? Let's say now. And we submit that, and it's correct. So now it takes us back home to the original page. And if we want to find out about information about about the people who developed it. It says about us and who we are and why we made it. And then that takes us to a user interface button that takes us back home again. And that is an app for QuizMe. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can approach it differently. Let people go back to the question that they missed and take another answer until they do get it correct. So there's lots of different ways you can format this, all right? Okay, we're finished with that one. We move on to the next one. Okay. The next one deals with decision making. Okay, similar to the quiz app, a decision tree app asks the user a series of questions. The primary difference between the two is that a decision tree doesn't check for right or wrong answers, but instead attempts to give you, the user, a suggestion or help them make a decision based on their answers. The simple decision maker asks only 3 questions, but more advanced ones actually take the form of a tree as seen below. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see how it works. How it works, it goes to the same page, how it works, and this gives an example of how the app might work, and then it gives you a user interface button to go back home. Make a decision. Okay, so here's the actual app. Which one? Let's say this one. Okay, why? Let's just say because. When? Nowish. So it's a continuation. It actually continues on information it's seeking for you to look at. So we say nowish, and your results based on your response, you are a pretty neat person. All right, cool. I'm a neat person. I'm glad to hear that. So now we go back to our user interface button that takes us back home, and we are done. And again, here's a button about us. So the maker has a little information about them, how they made it, why they made it, and that you should always put in your apps. Give some information about you, why you developed the app, what the app is actually for, maybe, and it just kind of lets people know who developed it and why. All right, so let's go on to bubble number 5. Let's see. We'll skip to bubble number 5 here. And bubble number 5 is the last, or not the last app, but it's, I believe it's the last one. List Manager. List Manager app allows the user to keep track of the state of information and can be modified to serve many different purposes, such as checking in or out loaned items, tracking personal to-dos, or keeping track of where things are in multiple step process. While this example focuses on a single list, more sophisticated lists can allow the user to create multiple lists or even more items between lists. This app also only keeps track of the name of an item and whether or not it is done, but it could be extended to track and organize any amount of information about these lists of items. Excuse me. Functionality missing in this particular prototype: delete buttons don't actually delete items from the list, and add screen doesn't actually add an item to the screen list. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. We'll take a look at what that meant. Okay, again, how it works. Well, there's an explanation of how it works. We go back home, view lists. Okay, here's the list. Okay, so we have a list of items and which ones are checked and which ones aren't. So we can actually go up and check things and add an item to the list. We add an item, but it doesn't really do it. So if we say this thing, let's type it correctly. Let's put a capital in there. This thing. So when we add it, let's take a look at it. It didn't add it to the list. So this is not really set up to take on things that we add. It's not complete, in other words. So it gives you an idea of how it works, but you have to go in and actually make it so that it allows you to add the item to the list and continue with that. Okay, so then we go back home, and there it is. View the list. Okay, add the list again. We can go back home, and then about us again. A little information about us. And that is that app, List Manager. Allows you to complete a list, check your list, and hopefully when you do complete a list or an app like this, you make sure that you, and as part of a paper prototype, make sure that you add everything into your prototype that you're going to put in your app. In other words, were we able to add to the list? No. And that's what it said the missing items in the prototype were. Okay, let's go on to bubble number 6. And bubble number 6 is the crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing app allows multiple users to submit content for everyone to use. The source of the content is the crowd. The app is very similar to the list app, with the main difference being that this list app assumes a single user, while this app allows all users to add to the same list and like submissions. This example uses a list of crowdsourced information for simplicity, but you could display any kind of information in many different formats. Yes, I'm having a little problem with reading this morning. A crowdsourcing app could allow users to submit locations for display on a map, images to go into a gallery, or any number of other items of information. The things that are missing in this particular app: users can't create accounts or profiles, submitted things aren't added to the list, and clicking on the like icons don't change their state. Okay, let's go through the app. Push the run button. Okay, how it works, we all know how it works. Again, we get information on how the app works. And always make sure that you do that. You have to put in something about your app, how it's going to work, what it consists of. That always is nice to have, so that somebody who may not even know what your app is about can at least get information on how it's supposed to work. Okay, so we look at the crowd, and here's the crowd. The crowd of people is all there. Submit a thing. We already did that on the other one. Now we're going to submit thing. Let's try it again. This thing. We add it. And is it there? No, again, it doesn't add it. Let us add something to this. Okay, submit a thing. This thing we already did. We added it, and it still didn't work. Now, this is from the crowd. Okay, back home, user profile. This allows us to make a user profile for who's adding the items, maybe. Type your name in, favorite color, email address. Email me, yes or no. That allows you to switch that around. And then we save it. Goes into a bank that allows you to save all of the people that are in your crowd, so that you can possibly contact them again about information concerning the survey they took or whatever else was involved in that list. Okay, again, that's crowdsourcing. All right, so that's pretty well it for the lists that we're doing, or the apps that we're looking at. It kind of gives you an idea of what is out there and what's available for you. You can use it and take it and maybe incorporate it into the app that you want to do. This might give you some ideas, and that's the whole idea behind it. So now what we're going to take a look at is, if you grab your activity guide and make sure that you have asked your instructors. I try to put the activity guides now in the bottom underneath the actual video itself, so that you have them available. So I will try and do this in this particular lesson also. Okay, this activity guide deals with user interface elements. The following is a label of some user interface elements that are available in AppLab. For each element, discuss as a team, what you think it does and how you might use it in your app. Write down the intended use column. Okay, so go ahead and take a couple minutes and go ahead and do that with your partner, or you can do it with yourself. Most of these you'll find online, somewhere in the internet. You can go to Google searches, and if you don't know it off the top of your head, take a look there and you'll find the meanings to it. We'll get back to going over the meanings in just a couple minutes. Okay, we're back. Let's go into what we should have found about our user interface, user interface elements. Okay, we call them UI elements from now on. Okay, so the button allows user to begin interaction. Okay, the button is just a button. You push the button and it starts your actions for your app. Okay, the next one, text input, allows users to add text to a screen. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. ABC label displays content classification. In other words, it makes a label for a particular item in your app. The next one, a drop down, allows users to select a value from a series of options. Okay, so it's a drop down node. You go and press the button. You have a drop down that maybe gives you a couple different screen pages to go to, a couple different answers to questions it might ask. It's like a drop down you'd use in a test or something along that line. The next one, the radio button. What's a radio button? That was the one that really stumped me. Well, it allows the user to select one option from a set. Okay, so it's somewhat like somewhat like a drop down, but you're allowed to, or you have the ability to pick one or the other. Okay, so it allows user to select one option from a set. Could be, it's like a multiple choice question or answer, if you look at it that way. Okay, the next one, checkbox, allows user to select a value from a small set of options. So you check yes or no, one, two, or three, something like that. Again, it's for answering questions maybe, or having you go to a certain page. It allows you to check a box and take you to that page. Okay, image, graphic representation of something. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. And text area for use of extended user input. Okay, for use of extended user input. In other words, it adds text to a certain item that you might have on your app. Okay, and then the last one, the slider, allows user to adjust images or other characters on the screen. Okay, so that's the user interface elements. Now we're going to look at real quick is a paper prototype example. All right, this is a paper prototype for What's for Lunch. Okay, this paper prototype is actually designed as a game, and what it does is it takes you many different places, and What's for Lunch is the main page. So I'm going to let you look at it and kind of get an idea of how it works, all right? And then I'll discuss it. I'll come back and discuss it with you. Just get an idea of how it works. Follow it along. See if you can actually follow the navigation bars for each of the screen pages. And then we'll talk about it. Okay, What's for Lunch? This is like a game, somewhat of a game. And if you look at the front page, and I hope you can see my mouse on the screen, this is the initial screen of the front page well, it's actually the second one. The first one is called Sufficient Software. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger so we can see it here. Okay, so there's a little bit bigger. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the different screens that they have. What's for lunch? Now, it looks like it's a tree, and it gives us different places to go based on our tree. Each page is kind of a part of the tree. So the first page, or the first part of the tree, looks like it says Learn. And if we push the Learn button, it takes us over to the Learn page. Facts about the pyramid of the tree, a little bit of info. And then we have a back button that actually would take us back to the screen. Okay. Then the next one is About Us. Again, that takes us to the About Us page. And then there's also a back button that would take us back to the screen, the main screen. Then there's a Research button. And again, it takes us to the Research page and then back. And then How to Play, which is nice to know. It's a How to Play button. We push the How to Play button, takes us to the How to Play page, and then a back button. And it also takes us to a picture. And I'm not sure what the picture is unless it's pictures of the food, but there is a picture down there for us to look at. Then it also takes us back to the screen page, the home page. I should call it the home page. Okay, then when it says play. So now we're going to start to play. So that takes us to page 1 of the actual playing of the game, which is, oops, let me get out of that. How to play, we're going to play it. I guess we pick out our foods that we like, what we want for lunch. We chose our items. And then from that, you get points, it looks like, for each item. And then here's your score, okay? So based on what you get or what you choose for breakfast or lunch or some items that you might be healthy, you get a score. And then from that, your score is determined as to how healthy, I'm guessing, how healthy your lunch was. All right. So that's a paper prototype. It also has a navigation system, which allows you to see where each page goes and comes back to. And that's what you may remember. You must have that navigation page in your paper prototype. It allows everybody to see where you're going to and from. And if there's some actual areas that you need to improve on. Now, had this page, the very first page, not had a back button on it, you kind of would have been stuck here. And here's another thing to think about. Do I want to go from my Learn page to About Us page? Do I want to have a navigation button for that? And it's something to think about. Do I want my people to always go back to the homepage to get to anywhere else? So something to think about. We're going to skip the suggested screen portions because we've already gone through those. Now you're going to start developing your own apps based on the app you plan to develop and the suggested screens on your first page of this guide. Identify all the screens that you'll need to design. For each screen, write a brief description and include a list of all of the other screens that you will need to link to. Okay, so here is your description page for your screens and links. And this is for you to start getting ready to build your paper prototype. All right, so this is it for this particular section. Here's an example of, here's a bigger example of what's for lunch. I guess it's a little easier to see. Again, the navigation bars going to and from, to and from, to and from. And again, should there have been a navigation from the research to how to play? Do we want our people to go from the research to how to play? Do we want them to go from the About Us to the research page? There's a lot of different things you can do with it. And just decide for yourself and your partners, if you're working with a partner, how much navigation you want to go, where you want to go to and from, how you want your app to work. And that's the whole idea of a paper prototype. All right. So I hope you learned a lot about paper prototypes, how they work, what their purpose is. And their purpose is to really solidify how you want your app to operate. And that is the whole idea behind doing examples of paper prototypes ahead of time so that you can iron things out before you actually start coding. All right. All right. So that concludes this lesson. I hope you got a lot out of it and I hope you enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Thank you.